woods and overnight camp with a 10-month-old baby. So it sounds much worse than it was. It was good. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. But I'm glad to be back. We've got a jam-packed show for you today. Welcome in everybody from all the different platforms. Also, I missed you guys, Foul Territory. If you are here on the Foul Territory channel, make sure you give it a little subscription because that number continues to go up, but that is the goal. We have so many things to talk about today. Like, a lot of stuff has happened. August is usually a slower month in general for everybody. It's the end of the summer. It's when families are going out and going on vacation. People are physically going to a lot of baseball games, but we're not necessarily close enough to the end of the year yet for like the races to really heat up, and the trade deadline's over, so no one's really moving teams. The storyline, it's kind of the dog days of summer, and that's what we mean. We mean August. So that's why I tried to take off. That's why I tried to take off time during these months, because if not, I'll never take time off, and I know that that does not work. But that also means that there's a few weeks of stuff to catch up on, so we're gonna hop right into it. And as always, don't forget to ask questions. We got producer DK, David Korn, on this. He is in the house and he is ready to grab any questions you ask in chat. If I don't answer them right away, we will save them for towards the end of the second hour of the show. So never fear, that will happen. All right, let's get right into it. Let's just do the dang thing. Mayday, August 27th, 2025. Many things have happened, one of which, a big one, and this isn't going to make Philadelphia Philly fans very happy, but we are going to start off with our first topic of the day, talking about thoracic outlet syndrome in baseball, or TOS, for those of you that are in the know. This is far and away, I think, the biggest threat to pitchers moving forward of any injury, including Tommy John surgery. For years, it was the other one, but now it seems like TOS is becoming more and more prevalent. So we're going to talk about it, what it means, and how it's going to affect these Philadelphia Phillies and this gentleman, Zach Wheeler. Now, Zach Wheeler is down for the year. He needs thoracic outlet surgery, and he's out for the rest of the season. This is not as uncommon as a lot of people think it is. It is a surgery that is around your collarbone area. We will talk about specifics, but he was the presumptive NL Cy Young, which that's a big blow, and the Philadelphia Phillies have a 5-game lead in the NL East, but they don't have their ace anymore. Now, Aaron Nola is coming back, and they do have a fairly deep rotation, especially with how well Taijuan Walker has thrown lately, but the guy was probably going to win his first Cy Young, and now that's probably not going to happen because there's a gentleman named, you may have heard of him, Paul Skeens, hot on his heels, and it looks like those counting stats he was winning in are not going to be able to hold him out. So, on their quest to win their first World Series since 2008, the year that they drafted Trevor May in the 4th round, which is obviously the reason they did end up winning that World Series. The fact that he's hurt might not even be the worst part. The injury itself could potentially be complicated moving forward, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Now, this is not Philadelphia sports fans' first run-in with this specific injury. You may remember this gentleman, Markelle Fultz, after being their first-round pick a few years ago, went to the NBA and simply could not hit a shot, could not hit the rim a lot of times. He looked like he was in Space Jam and the Monstars has stolen his mojo. That's what it looked like. But it turns out he also had thoracic outlet syndrome, which does one of the worst things for a sport that needs to be able to feel a piece of equipment like a ball, and in order to manipulate that ball in subtle ways in order to do their job well. Those type of jobs are so hard to do when you have thoracic outlet syndrome, okay? So I know that's two not so happy memories at the same time, but there is hope in here. Just bear with me, okay? So what is thoracic outlet syndrome? So anyone who has heard the word thoracic spine, loosening up your back, basically it just means your upper spine. That's your thoracic area, includes your ribs and the scalene muscles that go underneath your pecs and connect into your ribs, move your basically shoulders forward and backwards, along with your neck muscles and your traps and the delts and everything else, okay? But you can see it here. There is your collarbone, which is this big bone that sticks out. Everyone knows where the collarbone is, but a lot of people don't know that your first rib, that top rib, tucks right up under that collarbone. And in between those two bones, we have a set of nerves, and we have some arteries and some veins. So like there's this bundle of stuff that goes through here, and your thoracic outlet is the gap between those bones. So when you hear thoracic outlet syndrome, it means there's something wrong with your thoracic outlet, which is pinching something in that group of things, okay? So this manifests in a lot of ways. One, you get dead arm, meaning you're not getting good circulation, or either your blood flow is not great or your nerve is getting pinched. So either way, it's not allowing you to really feel that ball coming off your hand, and it just kind of feels like fatigue because it's like getting a little bit less oxygen, right? You get 10% oxygen when in Colorado, you just kind of generally feel more tired without really feeling anything crazy, right? You feel normal otherwise. You just can't catch your breath as easy. It's that type of thing. And it's hard to tell how much this is being pinched until you start getting severe symptoms, which we're going to talk about in a minute. You can get numbness and tingling. I've played with guys who've had thoracic outlet to where as soon as it dropped below 70 degrees outside, their fingers that they pushed off of to throw the ball, or their middle fingers most of the time, because these are the biggest ones with the most distance for blood to travel before it goes back towards your heart, they would turn white and they become numb. It's very similar to like being cold. When your fingers get cold and they start to turn white, that is exactly, it feels like your fingers are cold when it's not cold outside. And I played with more than one guy who had this happen in the minor leagues with the Twins, and one guy who was in the minors with the Mets. So that type of stuff is happening pretty regularly. Sometimes in extreme cases, you lose motor control, like you can't, your brain tells your arm to do something and it just ignores you. That's obviously in a very intense pinch. And then circulatory issues, like I just mentioned, like you're just not getting blood where blood needs to go. So the reason this is common in baseball, and also it's common in other sports that involve overhand, so like sometimes tennis players get it, sometimes cricket, like any throwing, water polo, these are things that could possibly have thoracic outlet be something that's normally seen in their sport. But it's the throwing mechanics, basically. Basically, you are pinching that area over and over and over again. Your body starts to compensate. I've talked about this a lot on this show, about how we're all just big chains of compensation that we've learned throughout our lives that turns into our anatomy and who we are. Like our bones form that way, and our muscles form that way. And it's very interesting about being a human being, but part of that can be you start to close that thoracic outlet because of the nature of what you do, and there's not a lot you can do to keep that under control. Like there's not a ton. There is some things, but that's something also that comes later in this show. So there's basically three main types of TOS, and I want to talk about different guys in the league who have got them and what it meant for their career, because I think there's one of these threes, I think if it is far along, is probably the biggest red flag for a pitcher's efficacy moving forward, like effectiveness. And that is one big issue. A lot of guys are coming back from TOS, and the ability to bounce back to your pre-levels the percentages are much lower now than Tommy John. They were about the same at the beginning. Part it's not as good. So there's neurogenic, right, which is the most common because that nerve that runs through is the biggest part of the bundle, okay? So if your nerve gets pinched, you can get nerve damage, and right now modern science doesn't know how to heal nerves. You can't heal a nerve all the way back up. That's one of the biggest things lacking right now for our ability to keep people healthy. Unfortunately, that's 90 to 95% of cases. And it's the brachial plexus nerves that go through here, and then those split off into the UCL and the humeral nerve, which I've had my own tingly problems with before. Nerves suck. You don't ever want to, imagine hitting your funny bone against crap all the time. It sucks, okay? Then there's venous, which means your veins. Those are the smallest. It's just a collection of different veins that connect in different parts of your arm, and some of those can get pinched, hurting blood flow. They can be potentially very, very dangerous because they lead to blood clots. The same thing with arterial. You have an artery that also runs through that bunch of nerves, and in that case, you do not want to have backup of blood. That is bad. Blood clots that stop blood flowing for any amount of time could be potentially fatal, especially if they make it to your heart. So these are actually like life-threatening if you don't treat them, and a lot of times they don't show up until right when they need treated. But we do have good ways to treat them once you find them. So blood clots are one big danger here as well. So there's two related to blood, one related to the nerves. So why is it so scary? Well, one, it's very hard to know it's happening until you have symptoms. And in this very specific case, like you're feeling numbness, or you're getting arm fatigue, or you get a blood clot, all of those symptoms could potentially be too far gone in order to fully reverse any damage being done, and potentially put your life at risk or risk of other very bad outcomes that could affect you for the rest of your life outside of sports. Like this is no joke, right? But if you're feeling the numbness and you're having lasting nerve damage, you can't heal that. So that might not go away even if it is addressed through surgery, which is scary. And I understand. Now, as far as I know, and from what I've read, Zach Wheeler has venous. He has the blood version. There was a clotting happening, which is scary, but they caught it early. So the venous and the arterial are the better versions for pitching, because nerve damage is something you can't mess with. You're not going to be able to come back. But if you can handle a blood clot, we have much better outcomes coming back and being able to pitch at your full level if it's one of those two. So that's the good news for Zach Wheeler and for Phillies fans, which, I never want anyone to have to lose any part of their career because of injury. So thank God for that. So it's scary because you can't see the symptoms till they're done. And one study done in 2020 on the Journal of Shoulder and Elbow Surgery found only about 65% of pitchers return to their previous level of play. That's only 2 of every 3. We do have some examples of some good ones, but we also have some examples of that being true as well. And we will talk about that in a moment too. So some of those guys that have been affected by TOS in the past: Steven Strasburg. Steven Strasburg, after winning that World Series in 2019 and signing the big contract, struggled mightily with the nerve-related TOS, which then gave him nerve damage over time. He tried to pitch through it a lot too long, and then he was never ever the same, because once you get diminished feel in your fingertips for feeling your pitches, that's most of the time all she wrote. Now, it might not hurt, but it'll never feel good again, and you'll never have that touch that you had before, which more than anything else might just be so frustrating that you just don't want to do it anymore, which I totally could understand. Chris Carpenter, another guy, you remember him from his baggy 3/4 sleeves, was a dominant pitcher for the Cardinals. He had his career cut a little bit short for the same exact reason, having to have surgery to work on that thoracic outlet, and it was nerve related. I believe he had a little bit of both. It was very constricted in there, and so it was kind of an ongoing process. I also played with a couple guys that had this too. We have Matt Harvey. In 2016, he had to have thoracic outlet surgery. Did the Dark Knight ever come back and play at the level he was before, throwing 98, 99? This had something to do with it, but he was able to play a little bit longer, but was never the exact same as he was. And then we had Chris Archer in 2020. He didn't pitch much after this happened as well. And even outside of Zach Wheeler, we had John Gray recently go on the IL with TOS-related symptoms, and they're contemplating whether or not he wants to have surgery. And he even threw out that this could be the last time that I pitch. I might be done after this, because this is the type of surgery that is very hard to come back from, and no matter how hard you work, you might still not have what you need to be effective as a pitcher, which I hope he doesn't pull the trigger on that and he hits an opportunity to pitch again, then it's something minor, but that just shows you how serious this can be. I even played in 2013 with a left-handed pitcher with the Dodgers organization named Mike Thomas. One day he showed up at the field and he was fine. About an hour later, his left arm, he's lefty, his left arm had swollen up to twice the size of his right arm. And they were like, that is blood clot. Like, that is what that is. So they got him to the emergency room. He came back later that day and they said, yeah, my thoracic outlet, I have a giant blood clot that has just stopped up here and no blood is flowing back to my heart from my arm, like very little, and it's pooling in my arm. So they have to drain it, had to drain it. They're gonna have to do that a couple times. And he was in a lot of trouble because it was a big one and it could have been potentially fatal if they not caught it, for another 24 hours or something, which is terrifying. He did end up coming pitching, but he didn't spend a lot of time in the major leagues. And that's the first experience I had with it, just seeing it in real time, like, oh my God, that's terrifying. It turned out to be even scarier than I thought it was. So, how do you fix it and how do you prevent it? Well, it's pretty straightforward, okay? So let's go back to this diagram here. So you see how those things fit in. So this bone right here that is underneath this bundle is your first rib. It is a rib that attaches to the top up here and goes right under, it's like right underneath your collarbone. And there's all these intercostal muscles around it and sheathing, all this stuff. And everyone's gap here is different size for whatever reason, right? Everyone is different. So some people are just predispositioned to have a really narrow area here. Some aren't, right? So number one thing is they look at that rib, because this rib is, for all intents and purposes, it's not structurally important for posture. It's not one of your major structural components. It's kind of like, it's not fully like the hamate bone in your hand, but evolution has rendered it not as important. So you can remove part of that bone or that bone if it's small completely in order to just open that thing up. So Phil Hughes in I believe it was 2016, Phil Hughes with the Twins, he had thoracic outlet and then he tried to come back and had to have more of the rib removed and never got back to form and ended up retiring. So removing that first rib is number one. Some people have like an extra little piece of rib up there. Some people, like, there's a bunch of stuff that can happen there. So number one would be widening that gap, and the best way to do it is to shave down that bone or remove it entirely, which is recovery in its own, right? Now you have no bone there, so something might change in your delivery, and then you got to learn all that stuff. So it's a long return. That is usually what the surgery means. It's just opening the gap up, spreading everything out, kind of like when you're trying to clean up your elbow for Tommy John surgery and make sure everything's sitting where it needs to sit. There are, though, and this is something that I made sure I did, especially when we learned about TOS for the last few years of my career, was maintenance. So there are all kinds of training techniques and like massage techniques where they can get in there with tools and scrape that thing out, and it feels like they're hitting your nerve. It's not comfortable. It feels terrible, but you have these things called scalene muscles that kind of go underneath that are part of your throwing motion. So sometimes those are so tight that they constrict this bundle. And if you loosen those up, that usually can relieve it a little bit and make sure that you don't get to the point where you're squeezing it for so long that you actually damage stuff. Stuff's gonna get squeezed, it's part of pitching, but you need to release it. And that is becoming more of the way that they do it. You can also get imaging beforehand. I know that some teams are doing this more and more, and they're just making sure they can see that thing before you even problem happens, so that they can get you on a program to maintain it if you have a naturally narrower path than others. So like they now know where it is and what's going on when it happens, that they can monitor it and give you be proactive in determining what that is. So in the case of Zach Wheeler, it is the arterial version. I believe, the venous version. He did have a small blood clot. He is going to be treated. I don't know if surgery is on the table. If he's missing the rest of the season, it probably is. But I expect him to have a good chance of coming all the way back, because it has happened, right? We had Merrill Kelly have it in 2020 as well. And his went really clean. He came right back and he was fine, right? So sometimes the symptoms aren't based on lasting damage. They're just based on early discomfort, and you can get a symptom somewhere else that isn't directly into your arm. I believe he had dead arm, if I remember this correctly, and this was one of the first things they checked, and they caught it early. So that's the key, is catching this thing early. And thoracic outlet, unfortunately though, there's not a lot else you can do from there. And that 65% success rate doesn't seem like it's gonna be as easy to bring up like Tommy John was, because Tommy John became a very straightforward procedure, and they developed a lot of different ways to remove different places, move your stuff around, or not need to move your stuff around, replace it, different areas in the body that you can do to add. With bracing techniques, we've got all these things that don't necessarily translate to your thoracic outlet. So it is scary, and it is quickly becoming the number one, I think, dampening of pitchers' careers. It is very clearly something that you want to avoid with all costs, but fortunately with this awareness, pitchers are gonna get better. So in conclusion, TOS is partly anatomical, partly overuse, okay? Something to do with the width of it, and then how much whatever your emotion does to attack it. But these things now, we can start to predict how to affect that, so that's getting better. It's not nearly as preventable as UCL with like usage, because little changes in motion can really aggravate this, and UCL needs kind of a lot of force, right? The amount of force needed is different. But many experts believe that as pitchers throw harder, this is something we're gonna see more and more. And so something to pay attention to. I want everyone to fully understand, because I think this one's in the baseball zeitgeist and not talked about enough. But thoracic outlet syndrome, the thing no pitcher wants to see, and no ex-pitcher wants to see any other pitchers have either. But now you know. So like and subscribe to the video so you don't miss any really hopeful videos like this in the future. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Anyway, we're gonna move on and try to get into something a little bit more fun. Let's talk about some news after we talk about some housekeeping. Guys, join the Substack. We have a Substack. Producer DK is writing a weekly article each week, just kind of breaking down some of the interesting things that happen from the week. I have a newsletter also that goes out through the Substack that gets you caught up on everything I've made, not only here on YouTube, but anywhere else. We are working on some fun like Easter eggs in order to get you guys cool like little prizes, and maybe possibly come up with my own like New York Times style game, which I've been working on for a bit. And I'll be honest, DK is just learning that right now too. So a lot of fun stuff happening there. But if you're not on YouTube for a week or whatever, you're like, I wonder what videos there are, you can always get them there. And I'll also, if you want to subscribe and support us monetarily, know that money is being pooled and to take care of our employees. We're doing profit sharing on it, and it allows you to get direct DMs to me that I guarantee I will answer, and that is $5 a month. It is free. You can get vast majority of everything for free. There will be some exclusive content. You will get videos earlier, but you do not need to subscribe with money if you can't do that right now. Believe me, I totally understand, and I want you to get what is worth it if you're paying. So also, we have a second channel, More Mayday, more videos coming out on that, especially now that we are back for the rest of the year. So pay attention there, make sure you sub to that so you don't miss those. And I got merch out. Let's let it eat in honor of Trevor Throws Cheese. By the way, Trevor Throws Cheese first episode, long form video comes out in just about a half an hour over on my YouTube channel. So check that out. Alrighty. And so yeah, make sure you're over there. All right, let's get into the news. Now it's time for the August 27th Major League Baseball news. Let's go right into it. After this word from our sponsors, got 'em!
Kratz, if you need to pay rent for your apartment and you're not getting anything for it, then you probably haven't heard of Built.
You have to pay rent every single month. Why not get some points that you can redeem for other things that are a lot more fun than paying rent, like flights, hotels, Uber rides?
That's right. And it doesn't stop there. Built is about making your entire neighborhood more rewarding. You can dine at your favorite local restaurants, and you can earn additional points with VIP treatment at certain fitness studios. And you can also enjoy exclusive experiences that are just for Built members. They announce them every month. Built is turning a monthly expense into an opportunity to earn rewards and discover the best that your neighborhood has to offer. Your rent is finally working for you, and you can earn points on rent and around your neighborhood wherever you call home by going to joinbuilt.com/foul. That's joinbilt.com/FOUL. Make sure to use our URL so they know that FT sent you. Get after it.
Earn points on rent and around your neighborhood wherever you call home by going to joinbuilt.com/FOUL. That is joinbuilt.com/FOUL for 20% off your first purchase. Wow, look at that. Now we're getting in the news. It is news time. August 27th. The Mets have turned it around a little bit lately, winning 4 of the last 5. And even though they did end up blowing a late lead last night, they were able to pull off a 6-5 victory against their nemesis, the Philadelphia Phillies, their 9th home win in a row against said team. Brandon Nimmo singled home the winning run in the 9th. Pete Alonso had 4 hits in the New York Mets, 165 like I mentioned. Alonso also delivered a 2-run double in the 5-run 5th to give the 5-2 lead to the Mets. Later, Harrison Bader ended up taking a guy who is mind-bogglingly struggling. That is Ryan Helsley, gave up 2 home run Bader to tie the game in the 8th. We'll talk about him a little bit more later. And he unfortunately was booed off the field. I've been there, bud. I've been there. Juan Soto, Mark Vientos each provided the RBI single for the Mets, who won their 4th game, like I mentioned, after being 5-16 in the last 21. So they need this. Edwin Diaz also got a 5-out save, striking out 4. He is now 6-2 on the year. And they've now pulled within 5 games the Philadelphia Phillies, taking the last 2 and winning the series. And they're going for the sweep tonight, which they need desperately. So, Mets playing a little better as of late, but we're going to talk a lot more about them in just one moment. Next up, Isaac Collins sacrifice fly for the Brewers past the Diamondbacks 9-8 after blowing a 6-run lead. The Brewers took an early 6-0 lead for the second night in a row. First game they won 7-5, but it was slowly whittled away and they eventually lost it later in the game. But they did what the best teams usually do, and that is pick up their pitchers, and vice versa. If you're going to go and you're going to have something astronomically happen or a huge momentum shift, you got to count on the other side of the ball picking you up, and that is what the Brewers have done really well all year, and that is what is making me feel good about their playoff chances this season and how far they can go because they are so good at this. Contreras and Bryce Ring each hit 2 homers from Milwaukee, and Gabriel Moreno had a 3-run shot for Arizona. Kyle Bradish is back for the Orioles. I would argue maybe a little late to save their season, but he looked sharp, striking out 10 in 6 innings on the way to a 5-0 loss because he was opposed by the Red Sox Lucas Giolito, who only gave 4 hits in 8 runs of stellar pitching, completing up that shutout. Though I would be very excited if I'm you Orioles fans because he looked like the ace that he is, striking out 10, walking 0, looking very sharp after coming off Tommy John, which is something that you can't say every guy does. And he threw 51 of 81 pitches for strikes, walked nobody. So let's take it. Feather cap, get ready for 2026, and he is going to be a major part of their eventual success if they're able to bounce back. More big dumper. He has now hit, that is Cal Raleigh, obviously. He has now hit his 50th home run, joining Mickey Mantle as the only switch hitter, one of the only 2 switch hitters with 50 home runs in a season, and he became the 8th player in Major League history to hit that half-century mark in the month of August. He is also a catcher. He's a catcher, and he plays in the bottom 3 hardest places to hit homers. So all that combined is pretty dang impressive. If you weren't impressed enough, he is the first ever in the history of Major League Baseball, first switch hitter ever to hit 20 home runs or more from both sides of the plate. Are you serious? And he's only the second Mariners player to ever do it. Joining, you may have heard of him, Ken Griffey Jr., who hit 56 in 1997 and again in 98. Another little fun Ken Griffey Jr. fact, 1998, that might sound familiar. That is the year that Mark McGwire hit 70 and Sammy Sosa hit 66. Ken Griffey Jr. hit 56 that year, and we don't even know about it. That's how many home runs were hit in 1998. Woo! Big dumper. Is he our MVP? Find out next week on Dragon. Okay, that's not the right. Moving forward, Kyle Tucker, interestingly enough, is raking once again. And it turns out that he actually broke his hand in June when he was hit on June 1st. Now, this is an interesting situation because there was a comment, not by his own manager, but by Brewers manager Pat Murphy, said, I think Tucker's hurt. I don't have any information, but Tucker's not the same. Now, he was hit on the hand on June 1st and then subsequently had a 939 OPS for the rest of June. So they're like, oh, yeah, he's fine. He's fine. But what you need to know about hand fractures is at the beginning, sometimes bracing, taping, stuff can handle it. But if it doesn't heal properly, the inflammation that you get around the area starts to become the problem because it never goes away because it's constantly trying to heal it. So if you're constantly aggravating it over and over again, you can get into this idea where normal is a little bit painful. And so what we saw, because we were getting ready to do Sunday Night Baseball, that is a Nerdcast. Shout out to Kevin Brown and Mike Petriello. They're the double goats. I'm talking about stats. We were talking about what's wrong with Tucker, and I said, does it have anything to do with his hand? They're like, well, that doesn't make sense because he's been hitting so well. And it turns out that because that inflammation never went away, you get in this normal where you're not really that excited about swinging. Like you're mentally like, ooh, like when you swing and you don't really realize it because you've been doing it for a while. His bat speed had dropped 2.5 miles an hour at that point. So they gave him some rest early in August. They gave him a few days off without having gone to the IL. And since, let's see, Tucker appears to be heating back up. Over the last 4 games, he has 6 hits and 3 home runs. And his home run on last Friday, his home run on last Friday was his first in over a month. So I think we found it. So Kyle Tucker, he's back. He's back. And now they just need to get PCA going, and the Cubs are back to being a lineup to be reckoned with, even though they were already pretty good. All right? Last couple little things here before we move into our main subject. The BWAA has finally done the thing that I've wanted them to do forever. And this relief pitcher has a smile on his face. The BWAA, that is baseball broadcaster, I can't remember what BWAA is, okay? Sue me. They now have a Relief Pitcher of the Year award. It's not going to be put into play this year. Now, by the way, Reliever of the Year is different. That is not a writer's award. I believe that is voted on amongst, it's like a fan and player award. So this would be a writer's award, which they usually have a bit deeper statistical analysis. Now, I think this is going to give an opportunity for relievers who are not closers to get a little bit of love. I believe when this was announced, the picture that was being used was actually Adrian Morejon from the San Diego Padres, who I believe probably would win the award this year because he has been nails when I'm not watching. Somehow, the 2 blowups he had this year, I was watching the game live. I'm sorry about that, Adrian. That's on me. That happens. I am a bad luck charm for more people than you would imagine. But I think this is wonderful. I think that this is a new thing that relievers can get a little bit of love for, and possibly a non-closer, because there's like 2 non-closers in the Hall of Fame total, which is just sucks. So I'm just glad there's a little bit more love. Maybe this thing will get built into some incentives. Guys can make a little bit more money if they do have an insane year, and they don't just get thrown into the pile of, they're pretty good, and you look and they have like a 0.6 in 70 innings. You're like, pretty good. Are you kidding? Like a Wade Davis type guy? That's nuts. That's nuts. So shout out to all the relievers out there. Love you guys, and the more love we can get you, the better. And then lastly, in our news, something that I think is stupid. President Donald Trump demands Roger Clemens be enshrined in the Hall of Fame because, you guessed it, they golfed together. And so that is all you really need to do to get him on your side. Social media post on Sunday, Trump argued that Clemens belongs in the Hall of Fame and should be inducted immediately. Now, statistically, I think we all agree. He is probably a top 5 pitcher of all time, though. Interestingly enough, did you know he struck out less guys than he had innings? Which that always boggles my mind with these guys who I imagine being the most nastiest guys ever. Strikeouts weren't as big of a deal for him as I remember them being. But anyway, here's the quote from the president. He said, "I played golf yesterday with the great Roger Clemens and his son, Casey. Roger Clemens was easily one of the few greatest pitchers of all time, winning 354 games, the Cy Young Award 7 times, a record, which is, yeah, that's crazy, and played in 6 World Series, winning 2. He was second to Nolan Ryan in most strikeouts. Actually, he was third. I don't know if you guys remember a guy named Randy Johnson, but I still think that he was better than the Rocket, even though the Rocket was still very, very, very good, and should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame, ! Or all caps now." So just to be clear, Clemens was third all time. It's very clear he was reading off a paper. I don't know how they got wrong, but surprise. And it was only a couple months ago that, if you remember, that Mr. Trump also wanted Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. Now, my question is, I don't know why he cares. I don't know why it's important other than just like doing a favor for your buddy, but he seems to be really interested in being able to say something and then have it just appear. So in my opinion, I think we should do what we always do and have it arbitrarily be picked by the writers, because it already is kind of an arbitrary award going to the Hall of Fame. It is. It's statistically based, but it's not like hardcore standards. So let's just stick with what we got, and maybe we just, I don't know, ignore them on this one. Actually, I'm just gonna say it. No. All right, that is your news. Had to end with that because it's stupid. All right, one more word from your sponsor, and then we're going to get back in to the main story of the day.
FT fam, welcome to the world's most comfortable swimwear. For a moment, we are talking about Fair Harbor. We actually have some show and tell today. This is the liner that you're working with inside of the shorts and the bathing suits.
You know what the best part is about this, Scott?
What?
They have a lot of different options, because these are clearly yours, because I would never order this pattern, but
that
they
is
look
so
great
me.
on you.
That is so me.
These are so you. Mine are a little bit more plain than this.
Yes.
But they are super comfortable. The liner, I love liner shorts. Some people don't. But these liners are better than most that I've had on, if not all of them.
Yeah,
Because
this is the
no
best liner out
chafing,
there.
No mesh. All of the above is perfect.
Exactly. It's really good. You got to give it a shot. Also, fun random fact, you get a new shirt. It smells really good. So head to fairharborclothing.com/FOUL and use code FOUL for 20% off your first purchase. Once again, Fairharbor, HARBOR clothing.com/FOUL for 20% off your first purchase, and use that promo code FOUL so they know FT sent you.
For 20% off your first purchase, head to fairharborclothing.com/FOUL. That is fairharborclothing.com/FOUL, and use code FOUL, FOUL. Thank you for sponsoring this episode of Mayday. All right. In our May-splaining, our main section, our main story of the day, let's talk about the New York baseball and what the heck happened since the All-Star break. What the heck happened since the All-Star break to the New York Mets and the New York Yankees? Let's get into it. All right, so for most MLB teams, the All-Star break is a much-needed break. It's in the name. It's a great way to get some of these nagging injuries kind of figured out, some rest for the guys who've been on it all year. It's a nice way for guys to go to All-Star game and really take in on how good of a season they're having. It is just all around a good time. Bad teams are trying to figure things out. Good things are trying to maintain and make sure their best players are healthy. And in an ideal world, everyone would benefit coming back. But sometimes that break snaps some mojo, some momentum, something going on that where we see some good luck and some bad luck flip on its head. And that seems to be what happened to these two teams, the New York Mets and the New York Yankees. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what is the biggest differences from half to half for each team. And then we're going to touch on a little bit how New York media can exacerbate or maybe confuse some of these problems and make it a little bit harder to make the adjustments you need to make. It is part of it. We talked about this in the past, but we have some interesting examples in here as well. So first things first, let's talk about performance and let's go team by team, starting with the New York Yankees, okay? Now, I picked out some categories and we're gonna talk about where they ranked in the first half and then how those numbers changed in the second half. So offensively, we know about the New York Yankees and how good of a season Aaron Judge had to start the year. He's still, I think, tied or slightly behind Cal Raleigh in that MVP voting. But here's how the Yankees ranked across the board in all of the different categories in the first half. In hits, they were 6th, runs 3rd, batting average 5th. They were 1st in on-base percentage, slugging, and OPS, 18th in K percentage. Now, they do tend to swing and miss with all that power, but they were 1st in walk percentage, and then 18th in stolen bases. So that's a classic Yankees kind of ranking list, right? They don't have to run a lot because they rely on the extra base hits and the home runs a lot in their park, but also how their lineup is built. They started the season with Aaron Judge having potentially the greatest season ever. They had Trent Grisham going crazy. They had Paul Goldschmidt going crazy. They had Ben Rice going crazy. Austin Wells started strong. Anthony Volpe started strong. Like, they all started strong. Torpedo bats. Jazz Chisholm started. Like, they were doing it, scoring lots of run. But now, and also they were 1st in home runs in the first half, which also kind of fits into that narrative. Now let's look at where they are at in the second half since the All-Star break. They are 23rd in hits as opposed to 6th. But they are 1st in runs. So, they are 24th in batting average. That actually might be wrong, the 1st in runs. That might be a misplay. Somebody in chat tell me. If it is, I'm so sorry, but let's go with it. 1st in runs, 13th in on-base percentage. They're still 6th in slugging. They're still 8th in OPS, but they're now 24th in K percentage. So they're striking out more. They're walking a lot though. They're still 2nd, but they are now 3rd in stolen bases. So suddenly they're stealing, but not getting close to the number of hits, and a lot of guys are struggling. Their offensive prowess has fallen off. We had an injury to Aaron Judge and his elbow that has not helped him swing. He's regressed quite a bit, though he's still having an incredible year. He is not what he was doing in the first half. And so their offense has definitely taken a step back, right? And a lot of the flack goes to the offense. So we talk a lot about how the offense doesn't get the job done because for better or for worse, yeah, sure, relief pitchers don't get a lot of love for sucking, but when it comes to overarching narratives, when the team struggles for a long period of time, that ire usually goes to position players, even if they haven't regressed as much as it may seem like they have, which you're going to see a theme here, especially when we get to the Mets. So let's talk a little bit about the pitching. So in the first half, here's how the Yankees pitching lined up, right? We have in ERA, they were 13th overall. In WHIP, they were 6th. In earned runs, they were 11th. In K percent, they were 4th. OPS, they were 2nd. Home runs, they were 13th. And walk percentage, they were 23rd. So they had a walk problem, but they limited contact. And this was everybody. Fried was insane. Rodon was insane. The bullpen with all their funky changeups with the Al Leiters and the Fernando Cruzes of the world, they just weren't giving up hard contact. And they were doing a good job of limiting a lot of this damage, right? They were doing a solid job. And they were actually 1st in blown saves, believe it or not, even with Devin Williams. Even with Devin Williams, they were 1st in blown saves, okay? Things have changed. Things have changed. Okay, let's talk about second half. Second half, ERA, they are 20th. WHIP, they are 25th. Earned runs, they're 22nd. K percent, 15th. OPS, 23rd. Home runs allowed, 10th. And walk percentage is the worst, 30. They are walking the most percentage of hitters of any pitching staff in the league. You can't do that in Yankee Stadium and win lots of games. So if they're scoring tons of runs, they're giving up more. And that is what it comes down to. It's a pitching problem. Max Fried has struggled. Rodon has kind of leveled off a little bit. Devin Williams is just like all over the place, right? We got a Weaver. He started absolutely insane. He's given up a lot more as of late. we know Jake Bird came over, immediately was sent down. Bednar threw pretty well at the beginning. Duvall did okay, but like hasn't been great. They traded for all these guys. They have not panned out as well. That's kind of the truth for both sides. But their pitching was kind of middle of the road before and limited damage. Now they're not limiting damage as well, and they're well below average. They're in the bottom 10 in what? 6 of those 8 categories. That might be your issue. So they were first in blown saves in the first half. They are now last in blown saves in the second. So it's not about just the struggle itself. It's about when the struggling is happening. And unfortunately, it's in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. And that is something those were the gaps they supposedly had filled at the half, or at the deadline rather. And it just has not manifested in that way yet. So if they can close off that leak at the back end, though, things can turn around in a big way. They have played generally better. It's not a free fall. Same thing with the Mets. They both played a little bit better lately, but they're kind of just holding that 10 game over 500, and they're both kind of far behind the leaders of their division now. The Yankees are in 3rd, right? They're just trying to make sure they get into the playoffs, let alone win the division. So Yankees, maybe. In the first half, their offense was working exactly the way that it's built, and that has fallen off a little bit in the second half with a couple of guys regressing, like Trent Grisham and Anthony Volpe. That combined with a very leaky bullpen where the clutch moments are just not happening for a stretch of time for about a month there is culminating into, even when we do hit and we do score a lot of runs, we still aren't preventing enough, and timing's really bad. You layer in the media on top of that, which we will talk about at the end. You have what we're seeing. Now, what about the Mets? Let's talk a little bit about their struggles, okay? Now, we know Pete Alonso, though lately has been raking, and it's great to see, but for the last 2 months or so, he has had possibly the work 2 month stretch of his career after starting really strong for the first 2 months. So he has fallen off quite a bit, but he seems to have righted the ship. It's funny, Juan Soto has actually been playing really well over the last 8 weeks or so, and it's been kind of hidden by their struggles as a team. But you're going to see a lot of really interesting correlations between them and the Yankees. So let's talk about their first half versus their second half. This is them in the first half offensively, okay? Hits, they rank 19th. Runs, 14th. Batting average, 20th. On-base percentage, 12th. Slugging 9th, OPS 8th, K percent 11th, walk percent 5th, and stolen bases 11th. All of those things are fine, right? We thought that they were underperforming because how good they were on paper, especially with how good Pete was playing too. You're like, why isn't this kind of coalescing? But we've had, Francisco Lindor with a broken foot all year. That's going to limit, like I mentioned, everything about Kyle Tucker earlier. That's going to limit your ability to, be at your MVP style heights. Even though he has been great defensively, he has been a little bit limited. Anyone who's watched him regularly, I think, knows what I'm talking about there. He is as good as he can be, but it's not, the ceiling isn't quite as high with that bum wheel, okay? So that's that's an okay offense, and they were very much carried by their pitching, namely like Griffin Canning, Tyler McGill. These guys came out hot after the injuries to Manaea and Frankie Montas. Like they were like, oh, what we're going to do with our starting rotation? And David Peterson's been incredible, and these guys have all pitched out of their minds. Now, after the first half, those things changed. We're going to talk about that in a second. But here's where the offense is in the second half. And like I mentioned, they went 5-16 after winning 4 of the last 5. So they were struggling hard. But in the second half, they are 8th in hits, 9th in runs, 8th in batting average, 4th in on-base percentage, 7th in slugging, 5th in OPS, K percent 7th, walk percent 4th, and stolen base 4th. They are top 10 in every single one of those categories. Their offense is way better than it was in the first half, yet they can't win games. And what do they always say in every baseball movie and in every single baseball show you've ever seen? Pitching wins championships and it also loses them. And so this seems to me to be a pitching problem. Another cool thing about the Mets, in the first half, they were third in exit velo as a team. Second half, second. So they've been hitting the ball really hard the whole time. And in the second half, it looks like a lot more of that has been cleaned up. They have been chasing a little bit less. They've been walking a little bit more, and they're getting more luck with that exit velo. So they were basically unlucky as an offense, a little bit on the unlucky side of the offense. Some of that stuff has corrected, and then some of the guys have also played better and hit better. That combined makes you a top 10 offense, even though not a lot has changed. So that's good. Mets fans should be excited about that, because if you can just turn around that pitching a little bit, we'll be ready to go. All right, so let's talk about the pitching side. Here's where the Mets rank in the first half and all the pitching, okay? First half, they ranked 19 in hits. They gave a lot. So there's a theme here. Lot of base runners, but not a lot of runs, okay? 19th in hits, 14th in runs, 20th in batting average, but 12th in on base, 9th in slug, 8th in OPS, 11th in K percent, but 5th in walk percent, and 11th in allowing stolen bases. I think I just said all the hitting stuff again. I'm going to go right back. I just read the wrong stuff. I'm so sorry. Let's do this one more time. Okay. Rewinding. Oh, my God. Here's the Mets. Here's the Mets pitching. Okay. An ERA, 5th. This is first half. WHIP, 19th. A lot of runners. Earned runs, 4th. K percent, 12th. Walk percent, 27th. OPS, 9th. And home runs allowed, 1st. So what I'm hearing is walking a lot of guys and allowing a lot of base runners with WHIP. So 27th and 19th ranking those. A lot of guys are on base, but they're stranding them. So there's a little bit of luck involved, especially because their strikeout rate was 12th. It's not like they were striking everybody out either. They were getting good defense behind them, and they were getting lucky, hard hit balls at people for the most part. That stuff might regress. It might not, but it's usually a red flag. And unfortunately, if we go look at the second half, a lot of the other numbers started to inflate, but those stayed the same. So in the second half, they were 5th in the first half in ERA. They are now 23rd. Then they went 21st in WHIP, still too high. Earned runs went from 4th to 19th. So a lot of those guys on base started scoring. K percent went from 12th to 16th. They were striking out less guys. They actually improved their walk percent from 26th, 7th overall to 21st. OPS was 18th as opposed to 9th in the first half, and now they're 4th in home runs allowed instead of 1st. So everything else regressed. They dropped down the list on every other group, but they still allowed the same amount of base runners. When that happens, you're going to give up a ton of runs. So the offense has improved, but the pitching has kind of come down to earth so hard that the offense can't stay ahead of that. But some of these young guys, Nolan McLean, we got that the young buck coming up and getting his debut, I believe, tonight, which I kind of want to check out. He looks amazing. If these guys can be the Tyler McGill of what he was in 2022, this could be big. This could be big. And I think they got some hope on the horizon. But the talent is up here. The ceiling is here. We just need guys to get hot at the right time because the offense is locked in. So, in conclusion, their pitching overperformed in the first half. It came back down to earth in second, and their hitting got a little more lucky, but the balance there went a little too heavy to the poor pitching performances, and that is why we are where we are. So, there is one other element feeding this fire of, oh God, everything's burning around us. This is the worst thing ever, and that is media. So, 3 examples of New York media and why I love it so much. First things first. This is super interesting. Brandon Tierney and co-host Sal Licata, WFan, my guys over at WFan, were discussing Juan Soto earlier this month, specifically around whether or not the Yankees are missing having him as they deal with the struggles of their own. And basically what Brandon Tierney said was, I think there's a good chance he's not 26, and he's talking about Juan Soto. So, I don't think that's true. I mean, he's been in the major leagues for 7 years. That can take it out of you. Okay, I can't prove it, but while I don't know for sure, I think there's a good chance he's not 26. I'll say it. That's the nature of sports commentary, guys. That's the nature of hot takes, and that's the nature of getting a clip picked up, put it on TikTok, and getting 1 million views. frankly. It's just that way. And that is sometimes the motivation because there's really not any consequences, right? Which, you know, it's a throwaway. It feels like a throwaway, a little bit out of pocket, but I'm not going to judge at all because I don't do their job and I don't need to. I have a YouTube. This is YouTube. Like, you know what I mean? That said, that's an interesting take. But that's the type of thing that you're like, those are types of questions that you'll be asked in a post-game interview. You'll be like, do you think Juan is actually 26? And then you have to, as a serious adult, say, no, like he is what? I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? So we had the rat and raccoon thing when I was there. I had to answer questions. I was answering questions about that 7 months later. So it is just kind of part of the deal. And that could make focusing on what you're doing out there a little bit tough to do when you have to treat those questions as if like they actually need to be answered. Additionally, Anthony Volpe has been getting absolutely decimated by the beat writers in the Yankees media. He's been benched. He's been blamed for a lot of things. He is second in the league with 17 errors. He has made some very key errors this year. So going from Gold Glove to being second highest error total is not great. He's also won for his last 32 and he's really struggling. You can tell he's really struggling. He seems to feel it. But basically, everyone's talking about like how long until Anthony Volpe's going to be benched. And when you have a clock start in the back of your head and start ticking, and you are in the biggest market in the world, it makes taking a step back and being patient with your own development very hard to do. An extreme example of this is like Joey Gallo, right? He just could not like even get started. I'm not saying everyone is that, but that's the extreme version. But there is an element of like when every single thing that anyone says, you just think that you look around, you think everyone's thinking, when are we going to get rid of this guy? It's really hard to have confidence there. So I feel for him. But when you're threatened, it's hard to really commit, if that makes sense. Okay, and the last thing that I want to talk about is Aaron Boone making comments also on the W Fan about how Aaron Judge wouldn't be making throws like he normally would. Aaron Judge then said, I don't know why he said that. I'm good to go. And talking about his elbow and his elbow injury. I can throw the ball. On its face, that's just miscommunication. It is what it objectively doesn't matter, but it does highlight something very specifically. Sometimes it's just about the idea that they don't talk to each other and there might be some conflict there and not about the what is actually happening and is his elbow okay. You notice this story isn't about Aaron Judge and whether or not he can throw the ball. It's about whether or not there's drama in the clubhouse. And that is the part that you're constantly wasting energy on and can be very frustrating. And that's why we see him slap the table every once a month, right? It almost comes down to it's not about the poor play anymore, or poor play and just not executing isn't a good enough answer. There has to be something else, some conspiracy going on behind the scenes, because there's no way just losing isn't what's happening, because we have 28 rings. 27 rings, 28 rings. We have a lot of rings. So that is part of playing there. It is what it is. They shouldn't change. They should do whatever they want. You should just know that going forward. But it is interesting how this stuff happens, and this is the way I see it. I just think it's just an interesting, different type of beast. But if you can wrangle that beast, my God, is it a great place to be, great place to play, and the food's awesome. So that's Maysplaining. That's what has happened in New York, and that is how these two teams have kind of fallen off a little bit, but fortunately, they're both playing a little bit better, and with better play comes a little bit easier media landscape to deal with. All right, I'm Trevor May. I'm going to pop out over to Trevor May Baseball for Hour 2 of Mayday. If you are joining us here on Foul Territory, we'll see you over there. If not, have a great rest of your day. I'm going to take a quick 2-minute break, and then I'll see you again in just a moment. Hold tight.